Welcome to the Mind Myself podcast. I'm Esther, and it is my pleasure to be bringing you information about healthcare approaches, health issues, and people's health journey stories, all from the complementary, holistic, and integrative perspectives, helping you become your own best health advocate and helping you make your own informed choices because you matter. Welcome to Conversations with E, the Mind Myself podcast. We have a fantastic guest with us today, Sarah Griffiths. Welcome, Sarah.
Hello, how are you, Esther?
I'm doing so well. And I'm thrilled that we're going to be talking about this most important of conversations today. But before we jump into it, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and your own personal journey with this topic.
Yes, well, okay, so it's kind of a lifelong journey as it is for everybody. So I'm a girl of many different hats. I have been practicing and working with animals in many different industries since I was very young. So I have always been an animal lover, and that's kind of where my life has taken me into, like, the realm of animals. But in the process of that, I learned so much about how that applies to myself as well, because it can be so confusing and stressful and just overwhelming to navigate your own health by yourself or finding the right people to work with, and equally so in the animal world. But I do find when we're once removed, when we are like if it's our children or our animals, we always have a little bit more motivation sometimes, which we'll talk a little more about why that is. But we have more motivation to find the solution or find the right thing. And really, like, very on a visceral level, want to help our animals and our kids and whoever feel better. Sometimes we don't give that same courtesy to ourselves, which is something that I have really, it's come full circle after so many years of just, like, oh, I'm doing all this stuff for my animals and I'm finding all these answers and solutions and spending so much time researching and reading and trying stuff out and all these different supplements and, all these different things. And I have so much more value on how much animals teach us to do that, and how we can learn from them as far as intuition is concerned, and how much animals really know intuitively what they need, and they can teach us how to do that too. So I now run a private consultation practice. So I help people with their dogs, cats, and horses. And then I also do homeopathic human consultations as well. And I have a couple of companies as well. And I co-partnered with the Joy Beast Apothecary. And then I have a animal and human grooming, natural grooming line as well. So, and this has all come out of, like, I want to do things my way. And a lot of times, like with my products and the people that I work with, it's my core people, the people who I resonate with, people who share the same values with me. Those are the people I like to collaborate with. And then on the animal front, there's a lot of times where I can't find a product that I would like to use on my animals, so I make it myself.
That's awesome. I love that.
So
can't find it, make it, and you have the capacity and the qualification to do so. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. I've done so much schooling at this point. I'd love to take more schooling. Obviously, the learning never ends. But as it stands now, I'm a species-specific animal nutrition specialist and a homeopathist, classically trained homeopath.
Wonderful. Well, tell us how you came to this journey of navigating the holistic world? Or maybe you've told us a little bit about how you came there, but why is it so confusing?
Yes. Well, okay. So everybody has, there's so many different types of practitioners out there and spiritual teachers. And a lot of people like to take from, whatever works for them, which is really, honestly, kind of how I function at this point. So a lot of people get really overwhelmed and confused about what it is that they should be doing. And my job, I feel, as a practitioner is not really to tell people what to do, but to help people to find out what their core values are. What are they trying to accomplish? How do they want to feel? And so let's find a way to make that happen. So even though I'm a homeopath and a nutritionist, and I employ, herbs and all these different modalities, the reason that I have a tendency to lean on those specific modalities is because they've worked for me. And I have the most experience with them in terms of clinical and personal. And so a lot of what I do is based intuitively on the modalities that I know the best. If I don't know something about a specific modality, I will usually refer them to somebody that has that skill. But I always try, because again, you can get really overwhelmed at like the sheer amount of information that's out there and the number of people who are doing all these different amazing things to find what is resonating with you. So one of the only ways to really find that out is to sometimes try and not have it work out. So I and a lot of times there's a lot of fear involved in health and illness. So it really is about sometimes taking a risk and being brave enough to, try something different, try something new. A lot of people reach the point where they're at their wit's end, kind of at a rock bottom sort of stage, and then it's time to shift. So that's kind of one of the really great things about not feeling your best, is that it does encourage you to really try new things sometimes. So, we go through many of these periods of our life where it's up and then down and then up. And for my life experience, I've had, I've now understood that apparently about 15% of the population is considered highly sensitive or extra sensitive. And I am one of these people, and I always have been. And when you're really super hyper extra sensitive, a lot of times the normal, conventional stuff is actually too much. And it actually works kind of the opposite for some people than it does for maybe someone who's not so sensitive. So I went through a whole bunch of, on a, mental health journey, physical health journey, lots of up and downs with my physical health and also my mental health as a very young person. And then into my 20s and, all over the place, just going from one health issue to another health issue. And my mental health kept getting worse. And it was like spiral of like, in the wrong direction. And there was a point where I was like, okay, I can't keep listening to what everybody else is telling me to do, because no one is in my body and no one can feel what I am feeling. And I also felt like, we'll probably talk about this too, kind of the role of, addictive, obsessive, anxiety cycles that we have to either placate ourselves or distract ourselves or resist something that we really don't really want to look at. We're not ready to look at it. We're not ready to change something. There's a reason why, or we've got some subconscious programming that is not allowing us to access kind of that deeper space of, why, if per se, like I wanted to lose weight at one point in my life, and no matter what I did, I mentally could not stick to, eating healthy food. And there was so much underneath that I actually had to address before I could actually start eating good food, so, you can have all these wonderful intentions and plans of like what you're going to do and which supplements you're going to take and which diet you're going to eat and all of these things. But I feel like it may sound a little cheesy, but I think when we come into the world, we're actually spiritual beings more than we are physical, like when we first get here. So we navigate our world through our emotions and our like feeling body, which really has nothing to do with like making rational decisions. And then we're raised in however we're raised in what society, family, household, all of that stuff. We get all of this internal subconscious programming. And then that kind of lays out a lot of patterns that we don't even know that we have. And then if that isn't running in a healthy way, as you become an adult, it doesn't actually go away unless you can actually get in there and actually change those things. And a lot of what our society is today, especially, is like instant gratification, which is very addictive. This dopamine, serotonin, quick fix, even with like the phones and all of this stuff, we're actually programming ourselves to need that quick fix. And then we don't feel good when we don't have that. And if we're not actually aware of that cycle, you don't have to be addicted to drugs to have addiction problems, right?
Yes. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit about your journey into that place of awareness. I know you referred to a number of pretty significant things.
Yes.
And not to pry, just as deep or as shallow as you want to go with it, but can you tell us a little bit about the story arc of your journey?
Sure. Yeah. So I as a very, very young, like toddler, I think I was around 2 years old, I started having seizures. And my mom, thank goodness my mom had some foresight, but she took me in obviously to get looked over. And they wanted to put me on phenobarbital, which is a very serious drug that can ruin your liver. And, for a little tiny child, God only knows what that does. And I was on that drug for about 2 days before my mom pulled me off of it and said, "No way, Jose." And I was like, "Thanks, Mom. That's really awesome." And she came from a nursing background, so it was very interesting. She was just like going with her gut on that one. And I went for a whole bunch of tests, and it turned out like way later on, fast forward, I was diagnosed with something called reflex epilepsy. So I have a form of epilepsy, which is connected to my hypersensitivity. So it means that my nervous system is so sensitive. So my hearing, my sight, my smell, taste, people being close to me, going into a room full of people, it's like extra sensory information for me. So when I was little, a lot of times I would like hit myself on something, bang my knee, stuff like that. I would have a seizure. If I was terrified of needles, I would have seizures when I would go get needles. I even had a seizure during an EEG where they were putting wires on my head when I was about 7. And I was terrified because I didn't know what they were doing to me. And I had a seizure while I was hooked up to the machine, which was kind of handy. But at the same time, not so good. So now it's been such a blessing to know that, because I have been able to pinpoint exactly the thresholds that I have that will set me up to have a seizure. So one of them is sleep. If I don't get enough executive sleep, like if I have too little sleep for 5 days straight, that will set me up for not a good scenario. But long story short, I've been able to manage my seizures on my own without drugs. And I'm very lucky that my seizures are actually connected to an emotional state rather than it's not a chemical thing that I'm dealing with. So I'm really, really super lucky that way. But it taught me a lot about myself. Because I'm so hypersensitive, I was also hypersensitive socially. School was really hard for me. High school was like hell on earth for me. I fell in with a really bad crowd, et cetera, et cetera. Tried to kind of go the route of like marijuana, numbing myself, trying to not feel so much, which is something that I've read and experienced from other really sensitive people, that this is kind of a road they go down to try and like not feel so much. And all of those things resulted in not what I wanted, which is to feel better, right? And then as I journeyed into like my late teens, I got my first dog, and I was living on my own at that point, around 17 years old. And I happened to make my acquaintance with Julianne Lee, who's the founder of Adored Beast Apothecary. And she used to have a veterinary clinic, a holistic vet clinic for dogs and cats. So we actually randomly walked in there one day because my dog pulled me into her clinic. And that's kind of where my journey started. I didn't know anything about raw food or homeopathy or holistic anything. I was at that point in my life, like super overweight, mentally not well at all. I had really serious asthma. And then I put all this effort into taking care of my dog and, not letting him eat processed food and learning all this stuff about how to take care of him, and then realized, holy moly, like I gotta start walking the talk here, right? So I started experimenting with all of that stuff with myself. I started going to school for homeopathics for humans. So we were doing pathology, anatomy, physiology, and then our clinics and remedy studies. And that was 4 years. And I think that was a pretty transformational time for me, because I was literally like a giant disaster before that. And I had no idea that my sensitivity would be such a gift. The flip side is that, as a wellness practitioner, being hypersensitive and intuitive and all of that is actually really helpful and useful, but you have to be willing to like tap into that stuff, which takes a lot of practice to get used to.
Totally. And so tell us what we're fast forwarding now to having your life and yourself in a pretty good place. I mean, you're still working in lifelong learning, but what were some of the pivotal things that you would share with other people to pay attention to, like self-care, and what is it? And what were those defining things that made you go, yes, this is what I need to do, and I need to do this now?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing for me was to realize that no one had a magic pill for me. The only person that might have a magic pill for me was me. So, and that actually takes a huge amount of self-awareness and self-confidence to be able to actually see that, and to be enough of an advocate. Because, and this is the reason I learned this, was because of my dogs, because there were so many times when I went to the vet and I wanted to say no to what they wanted to do. And I felt scared to do that because they were the authority figure and they were the expert. But they don't live with my dog. They don't see my dog every day. They don't know my dog. It's my dog. And I would be the same. I don't have children, but I would be like a mama bear times 1,000 with my children this way. And I realized that I actually have to treat myself like I am one of my children, because that's the only way that, you know, you can put yourself into that context. So I was like, you know, I really need to speak up when I don't feel like something's right for me. And I really need to be open to like all the possibilities, because there's a million, if you haven't noticed. And that's what becomes so overwhelming, is like, what do I do? So you have to kind of define what you want, what your goal is, how you want to feel, and then start trying things. It's kind of like, you know, when you don't know your life's purpose and you're trying to figure out what you should do with your life, and you're asking everybody else, but really it is about what you want. And sometimes we don't know what we want. And it's really good to be honest and say that you don't know, because it's better than being like, you know, not being honest with yourself and trying to pretend like, oh yeah, I totally got this. I totally know what I'm doing, because nobody knows what they're doing all the time. So I think it's really important to remember always, like, if you can think about it like that, where you're either taking care of your pet or you're taking care of a child, what would you do in that situation if you were that child and you were at the doctor, or you were here or there at the psychiatrist or whatever it is, and they were like, okay, here are your options? You would want to process that the way that you would be processing someone that you're caring for, not like, holy crap, I'm so scared right now, I just want to feel better and I don't care how, I'm going to totally react to this and I'm going to just do this thing, even though it's out of a place of reaction and fear, rather than like, hold on a second, what is this going to do to my body? What is this going to do to my gut? What is this going to do to my liver? What are the long-term effects of this? You know, like thinking it out in a way that's like loving to yourself. And sometimes it is conventional, you know, part of it is a conventional treatment that is part of that. But to be able to look at everything through that lens, and what I've been really learning about and reading about and recommending to people so much lately is, like, I realize that a lot of people do not love themselves at all. So if you want a healthier life and you want to feel better and you want to be physically well and mentally well and spiritually well, you have to love yourself. So if you can figure out the answer to that question first, that's probably the most important thing you can ask yourself. Because if you don't love yourself, you won't treat yourself like one of your children.
Right, a beloved child or a beloved pet. So, and I know that some people will be listening and saying, yeah, but how do I do that? And so I don't think we can answer that so much here, except to say, be on the journey. And it's the most important thing you will ever do.
Yeah. And you know, this is something also that I've been really appreciative. I'm going to give Teal Swan a shout out, because I've been really into reading her books lately and listening to her a lot, because she's so real about everything, and not everything is so sugar coated, and it's great. And she actually has a book called How to Love Yourself, which is just the best book ever. I use it all the time. It has about 30 different tools in it. It goes through kind of the concept of what self-love actually is, which is a lot deeper and a bigger conversation than just, oh, you just have to love yourself and then everything's going to be fine. Well, it is really hard to do that if you have a lot of subconscious programming. You were raised in a dysfunctional family, which is like probably the majority of people. I know she always talks about how dysfunction is actually more the norm than a normal, healthy family situation. So we all carry, programming from our childhood that probably needs a second look. And it's always running underneath there. And, you can put the words on your mirror and say them 800 times a day. I love myself. I love myself. I love myself. But if you've got that subconscious programming underneath saying, no, you're not. No, you don't. You're a liar. You don't love yourself. You're not worth loving. That is actually what's happening. And then it gets to the point, and a lot of people are doing a lot of like law of attraction stuff. You could say every day, I'm wealthy and abundant. I'm wealthy and abundant. But if you have that underlying programming of like, I am terrified that I'm going to be in poverty for the rest of my life, and my parents were in poverty and blah, 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 blah. And like, then everything that you're saying to yourself is actually inauthentic. You're actually not being authentic to yourself. You're actually lying to yourself, which is actually throwing you out of being able to manifest those things. So it's really, really, it's like spirituality 2.0, where we can like be in 1.0 and it's like, everything is great and wow. And like, yeah, love yourself and it's great. And don't focus on anything negative and it'll all just work out. Well, life doesn't really work like that. So, and I went through that hard lesson a few times where, I did try to use those principles and I got really frustrated because the outcomes were not what I was expecting and they were very disappointing. And then I thought, then all that programming came up like, oh, there's something wrong with me. I don't deserve this, blah, blah, blah. It's for other people, but it's not for me. And all of that stuff came up and I was like, wait a sec, hold on. All of this stuff is what I needed to actually like have become a conscious, like, so I could actually see that that's what I was thinking. So that's the great part about doing those exercises, is that sometimes you'll get to the dark side of that, which there always is a dark side. And then you actually have to work with that and then actually change that programming, because that's kind of where a lot of us are really stuck, is like, we know something's wrong. We know something doesn't feel right. We know it's not working. We know we're not happy, whatever it is. We know it doesn't feel good, but we don't know why.
Right.
And then we take the supplement and we do a homeopathy and we do this and we do that and we go running every day and we go to the gym and we hate it. Like, I hate going to the gym, but then we do all these things to ourselves and we're kind of in resistance. So we're just, I just want to feel better. So like, is it any better to try and like take 800 supplements than to do a shot of heroin? Like, it's the same reason you're doing it, right? Like, it's because you want to feel better and you're grasping at straws and you don't actually know what you're doing or why you feel bad. Like, you know what I mean?
Totally. And well, I can't say I've had any experience with heroin, but I have taken a lot of supplements over the years. Yeah, and I know that's not what you're saying. But so in the notes for this podcast, that we are going to list some books that people and references and authors and people who've been on the journey and amazing people who've been to the dark side and incorporate the shadow in their life and are doing the work and probably are lifelong learners themselves.
Oh, yeah.
So what would you leave as a final word of encouragement to somebody listening today that might be going, oh my God, that's me. What can I do?
I would say the first thing to do is if you feel like you're not where you want to be, or you're really kind of at that like kind of rock bottom stage, which we won't get too much into it, but I think that's partly collective right now as much as it is individual. So give yourself a break, because there's a lot of shite going down right now, astrologically, socially, worldwide stuff. Then you have your own stuff. So, and we all kind of can feel that. And for people like me who are so hypersensitive to that, I actually am so happy that I've done all of this work, because I can, not always fully, but I can recognize what is me and what is out here. And I can actually make my goal to my promise to myself to actually like act and be in a way that's not going to exacerbate that larger scale suffering that's happening. So that's one piece. And the other piece is you need to learn to trust your internal compasses. There are probably many. It's not just northeast, west, south. It's like a million different directions. But your emotions, your sensations in your body, this is our compass. This is how our bodies actually tell us what we need to do. And so many of us either gaslight ourselves or totally steamroll ourselves and ignore it. And we just power through and we just keep going. And we actually cause so much suffering for ourselves when we do that. So, and then we try to reach for these external things to help us feel better, which are all wonderful. Like obviously diet, all of these things are a very, very important part of helping you to get clear enough to be able to feel what you're feeling, and emotionally and sensation wise, because you can cloud everything by what you're eating, what you're consuming on social media, TV, people in your life, toxicity, all of these things, right? Like, and once you can actually look at yourself in relation to all of those things, and again, treat yourself as you would want to be treated by somebody else, you can actually navigate and figure out what the heck it is that you need and what you want and what will actually help you to feel better. So, and I would just say, don't ever let anyone tell you what that is, unless they really, really, really love you and you really, really, really love them, right? So, those are all very simple things, but it's taken a long time for me to figure those things out. And sometimes we forget and we need a little reminder. So
Awesome. I love those reminders. And at the root and foundation of everything, truly love yourself. Yes. As if you were loving a beloved.
Yes.
Because you are your beloved. You might have other beloveds, but love yourself. And there's so many ways that we can get help. And definitely check in the notes if you're watching this, because there are some fantastic resources that we will put there for you. Thank you, Sarah, for taking this deep dive with us and being so vulnerable and open about your own journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love talking with you. It's so much fun.
Thank you for being with us at the Mind Myself podcast today. We know that time is precious and you've spent some of your valuable time with us. We're grateful. If you would like to reach out to our guests directly, the information is below. And if you would like more from Mind Myself, that information is also below. Please visit our website and check out all the information about the different complementary, holistic, and integrative healthcare approaches, information about health issues, more podcasts, tons of blogs, and we even have a community page for you where you could reach out and tell your story safely, or you could ask questions and perhaps somebody else in the world is going through something similar to you. In any case, we're so glad you're with us, and we're doing this because you matter.